My name is Vineet Malhotra, and this is a special show in association with Business World. Well, we're going to talk about how the economy is going to be revived and how we can survive through these perilous times which have been brought about as a result of this nuisance of a pandemic called COVID 19. We've been having this show since quite some time now, and the kind of ideas, the kind of feedback that we have received from corporate India has been stupendous, eye-opening, and at times it's also rebuked the government for the kind of measures that have been taken to revive the economy. Well, we have a new set of panelists, esteemed panelists today, and we'll discuss how to revive the economy with them today as well. And joining me on this special broadcast is Mr. Pavan Chaudhary, DG Medical Technology Association of India, Mr. Bharat Sethi, founder and CEO of Rage Coffee, Mr. Sandeep Kaul, CEO of White Light Consulting Private Limited, Mr. Himanshu Agarwal, founder and CEO of Magneto Clean Tech, Mr. Ganesh Sharma, co-founder and CTO of DotPay, and Advocate Pooja Terwar, founder of Pooja Terwar Associates, startup attorneys and business consultants. And last but not the least, Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Business World and Exchange for Media Group. All right, Mr. Pavan Chaudhary, let me begin by asking you a very simple question. What did you make of the government stimulus package? Did it stimulate your imagination in any way?
So, let me say that as far as the food provisioning part of the package is concerned, it was a great step forward because it is food, shelter, and medicine which is most important to stabilize the situation and make sure that there is no civil unrest. So the latest stimulus which has come to provide direct transfers to ensure that everybody has 2 square meals to eat is a great part. And beginning from there, I feel, of course, we have to revitalize exports, we have to revitalize manufacturing so that the jobs can come back. We have to increase demand, which also will be increased to some extent through this stimulus. And we have to also ensure capital flows keep coming in, which also we will have to reassure our industrialists as well as our consumers that saving is very good, but after some time, if you will continue to save severely, then the economy demand may be asphyxiated. Of course, these reassurances can come only after we have some way of social distancing and testing which is proving successful.
Pawan, I just want to ask you, you come from the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
Now, for the first time, unfortunately, we've had to do this debate between lives and livelihood. Now that we know that lives determine livelihood and the fear of lives determines livelihood, do you think we should invest more in healthcare than has been outlined? And if yes, what kind of investments?
So it is quite clear that healthcare is a very vital sector. Without healthcare intervention, we cannot handle this pandemic because the economics comes later. The first thing which comes is fear of death or fear of the infection. So surely the government has come to know and the industry has come to know that a lot more investment is required here, because the nurses, etc., you have seen that nurses have migrated.
Frontline healthcare workers.
Frontline healthcare workers, they have migrated back to their cities. One of the reasons was surely that they were not compensated enough to risk their lives to that extent. Of course, the society also needs to understand that these people are working under great stress and doing a great service and be more favorably disposed towards them. If you do not have some remunerative support and some prestige associated with your occupation, you will run back to your village, which is what has happened. So Earlier also we entered the COVID with a comorbidity, not enough nurses, not enough doctors, not enough facilities, and that has only accentuated. And our lack of funding in this sector stares at us starkly. You're right, Anurag.
We'll come back to you, but let's go to Sandeep Kaul. Sandeep, leadership in these times has become very important. We'll come to that. But what is your initial response to the stimulus as a SME entrepreneur, and why do you think mental health should be the focus? Sandeep, you'll have to unmute yourself.
So Anurag, I think good question. And what I'm seeing is that in terms of the economic stimulus, the government has done a good job on the rural side. However, on the urban side, there's a lot of it to be done. And that is opportunity also, and that is something that the government should address. Coming to the MSME sector, I think the government's intent has been right. They can do something in terms of operationalizing it. Because if you look at it, for the MSME, the loans that are available from banks, it's 100% government guaranteed loans, and they are available at 9.75 from private sector banks, which is a very high rate. So I think government can set directions in terms of the rate that credit is available. The good thing is the liquidity is available. That's a very plus point, and banks are also going for it. In terms of direction, I think they have a lot of intent, followed it up with a lot of reforms, which are very important. As long as they execute it, I think COVID is a very good time. As long as we are able to survive the next 6 months, I think we'll be set with good reforms in place like land, labor, and education.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Mr. Himanshu Agarwal, what's your predominant feedback of what's been happening around us, and what kind of a galvanization is required at this point in time to bring demand back? It's a catch-22 situation. Even if you make a push for demand to rise, you can't do so without antagonizing the virus.
Himanshu, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Thanks. I think your point is pretty valid. The challenge that all of us have in front of us is full of fear. So one of the most important aspects that we have to understand, from my understanding given on this subject, is this fear is not going to take us anywhere. Somewhere we also have to understand that in India, the pandemic has already existed. Maybe it has never been highlighted, but in some or the other form, it has always been there. It's just that now the COVID-19 has brought about this pandemic COVID-19 onto a limelight, but situations like TB has always been there, and India has always been moving ahead. We as a country has got a very strong underlying force to come back strong. We stay strong. So how I say that this is not a short term which is going to really bring us back. This is a little long cycle, because this is interlinked with the entire global scenario, and with us is going to take a little longer.
Okay. We'll come back to you on how we can deal with the fear factor and how we can get the economy. Gyanesh, your initial comments to the economic stimulus and what can be done to revive the economy.
Yeah, Anurag. So I believe that government has done probably what it could do. More than this, we are working with a number of industries, say food and beverage industry, grocery industry, or other retail industry. And the negative impact is not only because the negative impact is going to sustain because of change in consumer behavior as well. So let's say a restaurant was doing 100 rupees sale a day. Government cannot compensate them 100 rupees or a 50 rupees. They can only possibly give a 2 rupees, which is clearly not enough. Unless the consumers come back, unless the consumers start buying, I don't think that it is going to be enough.
In fact, getting the demand back is the key issue. And we've debated that, me and Vineet have debated that with our panelists and tried to seek solution on how to get demand back. We'll come back to you. Pooja, you work with a lot of startups. There is a real fear that startups may not survive, some of the startups, because their revenues are down and they haven't been able to raise funding. So has the economic stimulus impacted the startups, and where do you see the economy going?
So Anurag, I agree, and there's no denial about the fact that we are in a state of war. However, unlike the real war, there's not going to be a permanent loss of wealth, and we're not going to lose the entire productive economy to COVID. We are seeing wind-ups, closures, requests for business wind-ups daily. Almost 3 startups coming to a boutique law firm like us. Almost 3 startups coming daily for winding up, which is a shocking figure. However, at the same time, there's a different side to the story as well. We're seeing a lot of startups who are now coming to understand what the word disruptive actually means. A lot of startups, specifically in the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities, who are coming up with breakthrough technologies, because entrepreneurs, real-time entrepreneurs, do understand that a successful startup is one which encourages innovation. So I think with the economic stimulus, the government has recognize and acknowledge the fact that this is not the time to make a trade-off between lives and livelihood. And it could do whatever it could, but I think there's a lot of responsibility on mid-sized businesses, law firms like us, to encourage innovation and help entrepreneurs, because nothing but entrepreneurship and innovation and R&D is going to save our economy in the coming post-COVID scenario, I believe.
Okay. Direct to consumer, or direct to clients, or direct to the so to say, people who spend, has become the buzzword. Digital transformation has become the buzzword. We have people ordering right from essentials to vegetables to medicines online. I want to get each of your in on how digital direct to consumers and customers can accelerate the economy, and can it some way create demand. I want to come to Bharat. Bharat, your coffee enterprise has been growing in this COVID times, and you've been serving coffee direct to consumers. Tell us a bit about what Rage Coffee is doing, and what is your response to the economic stimulus.
Bharat? So for us, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah. You're audible.
So for us, I think initially in the first month when the lockdown started to happen, I think were very fearful, like every other player. But May, June, and now July has started to kind of amaze us, because we were not just digitally native, but we were also very digitally enabled. And the surge in categories that were underserved across the e-commerce market, be it groceries, be it FMCG, that have been growing, but still are very, very minuscule parts of the overall, e-commerce or the overall retail universe. So for us, I think we've seen a huge surge that has also been there because, we have been able to shift gears very quickly. We've been able to move and say, okay, we have the possibilities, we have the on-ground supply chain, we have the capital to start spending and acquiring customers digitally, and also to be able to go to them directly, and in the process pass on those benefits of savings in that supply chain to the consumer. So I think, for example, June for us was the best month ever for us online, and July I think will beat that. So I think for us it has been very positive, and digital transformation, I think COVID is the real digital transformation bringer, real digital change that will be happening in India now, because I think a lot of those habits, consumer behavior will not change.
Right.
You're saying consumer behavior will not change. I disagree with you there.
I have a question for Bharat. Bharat, we all keep talking about COVID-19 and how it's bringing about a transformational change in the way we do things, in the way we do business, in the way we consume things. Aren't we forgetting the elephant in the room, our equation with China and how it's changing, and how this dependency is leading to a new India?
No, I am absolutely, I think these are two very separate topics, because, dependency on China is not just because of, let's say, there are two kinds of things. First is the software, the apps, and all of the softwares that you've been consuming, be it, you don't even know that some of the products are being made in China, which we consume a lot in India and across the globe. So one is that aspect. But the hardware is sorry?
The agarbattis that we use at home for puja are made in China.
Yeah. So we have to start preparing ourselves. Now is the time. If we, do not see this as the torchbearer of change in India, because we have all the ingredients to make a perfect recipe, but we have to start today. 10 years from now, we'll start seeing all of those manufacturing shifts coming in, those economies of scale setting in, but we have to start because we have everything. We have the demographic dividend, we have the intensity, we have the land, we have the resources. We just need right policy making. Without right policies, we'll not be able to do the Make in India that we dream of. In 10 years, in 5 years of Make in India, we have been able to go from 1 to 2 or maybe 3. But we need this time to go from 1 to 10. And I think I've been propagating it throughout. Dependency on China should decrease, but it cannot happen immediately, but it is a step. If China thought 50 years back, like we are thinking now, then I don't know where they would have been. They thought of being independent. They realized that their country has all that masala is needed to make that perfect, $30 trillion kind of economy. So we can do that.
And that policy making also means lower cost of capital. One of the biggest differentiator between Chinese enterprises and Indian enterprises are cost
Absolutely.
of capital. We operate right from 9% onwards to 14%, depending on what kind of business you are in. And in China, you have zero or negative interest rates. And, the Chinese government is a major funder for all enterprises. So I think you're right that China started working on it at least 55 years back, if not 60 years back. And their long-term view has got them where it is. And the Prime Minister is doing the right thing of getting us to focus on being Atmanirbhar, but it may take a time. Now, I want to go to all the panelists and ask them about demand, because do you see the demand coming back? Because some of the consumer behavior is permanent change and some of it is temporary. So I would want a view from each one of you. What is permanent, what is temporary, and when and how the demand will come back? We can start with you, Sandeep, and go around the house.
So Anurag, what I see is talking to the clients in the FMCG, I think March, April particularly, and then to some extent May was really down. But I think people have adapted. I think they took time, the companies, and especially it started with the FMCG companies. And FMCG companies, most of the large companies that I speak to, medium and large, they are right now between 30 to 40%. Obviously, FMCG is one of the essential things, and they're targeting to hit 70% by September. Now, having said that, after that, it might go a little slowly because that's dependent on the discretionary spends of the customer. Other thing what has happened is, I think some of the behaviors has changed in terms of where we are spending money. So we are spending on digital a little bit more than physical goods. And at this point, I think we have to separate because the suddenness of this has altered our behavior. So the way we have to look at it is that it's not that this is going to remain same like this, just like when demonetization happened. So we had this digital things, especially led by Paytm and other apps, which was almost like everyone was using it. They still are an integral part, but they're like 15-20%. So it's much lesser, but they have come into the consumer behavior. I think same way, digital will become a part and parcel of the life. And the way the consumers are consuming, I think it will start with the companies having to alter their mindset. Because what position that we are doing, at least till December, I see from the companies that I speak to, is that they are having revenues of 2010 and cost base of 2020. So they need to really work on their proposition, like as Bharat was saying. And second is, I think, do cost cutting, but very consciously, because we need to cut fat, not muscle. That's what I advise clients. We should not cut cost everywhere.
So are you saying that the demand will be back in certain sectors before Diwali? Diwali is mid-November.
I think the essential demand, which is the FMCG, will be there. But some of the sectors were anyway, there were broad trends. For example, automobile, because they're with Uber, Ola. I think those big ticket demands might get postponed, those curves. So I think it will be sector specific rather than across the board. And within that, I think the rural demand would come faster than urban, because I think the government has not been able to really push, relatively speaking, as much as they have been able to do well in the rural sector because of Manrega and Jandan.
There's also the COVID in some of the rural areas is lesser because of less density, so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Pawan Chaudhary, do you see demand for non-healthcare, non-essential products and services coming back soon, or you think we're in a long haul vis-a-vis demand?
I think we are in the long haul, and allow me also to comment on some of the points which have been made and express an alternative view, which will also spice up, I hope, the things with the permission from my fellow panelists. So Himanshu said that we should keep fear aside, but I have a different opinion. I feel that fear is one part of intelligence. Temerity is that intelligence gone too severe to when you become timid. So there should be some level of caution, which was not there, for example, in Brazil, where Bolsonaro said, I will take COVID on my chest, I'm a footballer. Then you see what has happened in Brazil. And he himself has been diagnosed as COVID positive, and the whole country is disproportionately affected through COVID because of this reckless attitude. This is one point. The other point which I'd like to say is that this time things are different, because earlier pandemics, even 1918, we did not have the refrigerator. So we can store things now because refrigerator was not popular till then. We did not have digital. So we can buy and also entertain ourselves sitting at home and interact with such fine audiences and people like you sitting at home. So these are certain steam valves which we have got during this pandemic, which we did not have earlier. Coming to what Pooja said, I feel lives and livelihood, of course, but also we are not in the same boat. We are in different boats. For me, life is also continuing, livelihood is also continuing, and so same for you. But there are many people whose lives are connected with their livelihoods.
Correct.
So somewhere the livelihoods also have to come into picture. And what Bharat said, that the consumers will they change or not? I feel it depends on how long we have to suffer before getting a vaccine or a good remedy, a good therapeutic remedy, which will determine whether we will change hugely or we will change very less. If the vaccine is very good and it comes soon, then we might change less. So these are some of the points which I thought I should table for further dialogue.
Pooja and Himanshu, your views on demand, and when do you see it being close to the pre-COVID levels? Go ahead, Pooja.
Yeah. Anurag, the thing is the only challenge that I see is this crisis is indefinite. We don't know when this is going to end. And although we are hopeful that this won't last as long as a real war would, but we still don't know, right? We're just being optimistic about it. So I feel the richest person right now is who has cash in his hand. I mean, people do not want to invest in things which are not necessary right now, like automobile, real estate. We are seeing an extreme drop in the prices of real estate in Mumbai. The rents are coming down. So people have now started to prioritize things. And I think this is going to go on for some time until we see the pandemic settling down. So I feel that this is a fact, and we have to accept that not all sectors are going to have the kind of demand that we would hope would want to have actually. But some of them are going to, like FMCG, like Sandeep rightly pointed out, FMCG and areas like this are definitely going to see a high. But other areas, we'll take some time to cope up with it. But I would also like to point out one thing, just 1 second, Anurag. One thing is that once the economy actually comes up, actually this is not the right time to have an economic forecast. I'm sure that will invite a lot of skepticism. But once we are back on track, I think we should be prepared to accept that kind of a bounce also. We should be prepared, all our industries, because if the recovery is robust and it's it bounces back like never before. We need to have a policy and we need to plan and implement measures so that we achieve the goals that we aim to.
Sure.
So I think,
What you're saying, at some stage we will come back. We don't know when, but we should
don't
be
know when.
ready
So, yeah.
that at some stage this will happen. So we have to be, conscious of that. Himanshu, your final comment before we get into a break.
So how I see it is that if we see it 9/11, that was also a shock. And then the whole safety and other things started to come into the place. And then safety devices, CCTV cameras, that started to emerge as a new category. One of the important category that I see from here on is something called wellness, which is a much larger context of it, which will see its own dimensions of safety, hygiene, and many other things allied with it going to come by, spreading into FMCG in every other sector. I believe that after people being closed and experiencing this fear, they have also become very cautious about what the lifestyle that should lead. I think this is going to leave a very deeper mark for them to start adopting a new way of lifestyle, which definitely will constitute health as a prime area of their focus.
Himanshu, you think that the government and the state is also going to look at healthcare and wellness very differently now, as it did earlier on?
It's not that they're gonna, but it's imperative.
It's imperative, yes.
Yes, because that's the need of an hour. We have realized that we are not prepared. So it's like a war. The moment you realize that you are not well geared for the war, then probably next time you want it to be prepared. And all of us, as we are aware that this pandemics and the viruses coming by with its vengeance is not something going to go away. So biological forms is a new way of that we need to start learning to live with it. So we need to prepare all kind of contingencies for it.
How do you revive the economy? Digitization is the word of the day, and whoever is not on that boat, whoever is not on that train is not going to get to the destination that in fact eludes a lot of our people, because 80 to 90% of the people in India are not digitized at this point in time. And obviously we are talking about the COVID-19 predicament. We're also talking about in bits and pieces how decoupling, or rather, cutting off this umbilical cord with China is going to benefit India or not. Sandeep Kaul, your take on this? Obviously, it's a two-strong battle at this point in time. Obviously, things have, sort of mellowed down at the LAC, if I can use that word. But things are not mellowing down when it comes to COVID-19. The internal battle still rages on. And amidst that, there is this juggernaut of digitization. There is this silent movement towards digitization of almost everything. Your thoughts?
I think digitization is the way to go, and actually we have seen one of the reasons in terms of, if you see the government's intent, they wanted to help the complete Indian public, but they were able to do it in rural India because they had the Manrega and Jan Dhan in place. Unfortunately for the urban poor, they did not have the digitization. So it is that critical. So it was not the money, but I think just because of digitization, they could not put the schemes across. And what I hear from papers and what I heard from Niti Aayog, I think these people are working on creating digitization for the urban poor as well as for the SMEs, so that in time they're able to get the funds in place. Because if we see, the government was okay to give the funds, and like in UK, you say within I think 5 days the funds are available in the people's account. And with digitization, the response becomes faster. And I think that should be the aim of the government, to focus on the urban side, what they have done on the rural side successfully.
Yanesh?
Yep. So Anurag, 2-3 points here. So one is regarding, demand side that we were talking about. So I believe that, I agree with Bharat that demand is there. The consumer behavior, when he said that it is there, essentially consumer demand is there. However, consumer behavior has to change in the sense that, it wants to consume, but the mechanics of consuming that has to change. So for example, I as a consumer cannot go to the cinema, so the cinema has to come to me. I cannot go to a restaurant, so the food has to come to me. I probably cannot.
On a cloud.
Yes, absolutely. And, people like us, we are not frontline warriors like, doctors and nurses, but at the same time, we are helping these offline businesses get back on feet, and go directly to their consumers so that this consumer demand can be served in a different way, essentially putting business back on track a little, as much as we can. And the second point,
Anurag, can I add something?
Yeah, we come to you.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Sure.
Please.
the second point
As
about
we say on
China.
music, Bharat, as we say on music, this is the headquarters of news, not of noise. So 1%.
Yes.
So about the China thing, I think it's a very good thing that happened that the 59 apps got. We are already seeing benefits in the sense that Indian apps are right now replacing those. However, I believe that we should take a learning from here, that if we put sufficient effort on creating quality technology out of India, from India, then Indian companies can serve that demand, can compete, but it takes a bit of mindset, it takes a bit of stimulus, it takes a bit of support from the government, and possibly some differentiation, some discrimination, positive discrimination towards Indian companies.
Like in tenders, any tenders below 200 crores, only Indian companies can bid and get it. And Ganesh, for a long time, for at least 20 years, I've been saying, when will there be a product company out of India? I think maybe this one measure of, kind of decoupling the Chinese apps from India will produce that product company that may become global. So who knows? It's a good start to start thinking about being self-reliant. Bharat, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, just to add to what you were saying, and also the point of consumer behavior. I think just before COVID had started, I think even just 2 years before that, let's say 2018, we had started to see a new word emerge called omnichannel. Omnichannel has been taking over, right? And I think that is where the future is if you look at more mature markets. So I think we were just getting to a point where companies started to realize, including direct-to-consumer digitally native companies like ours, that we have to be present where the customer is. And even larger giants, legacy giants, started to understand that they have to come online companies, they have to be in one way or another, be present offline. And COVID just, I think, put kind of a pause to that activity. But I don't think that it's going to go anywhere. I think the future is omnichannel, and omnichannel in a very real way, where we are able to not just change consumer behavior, but also the demand is dependent on where and what the consumer really is wanting. Coming to the point of China, it's a very emotional and sensitive topic for entrepreneurs, because we have seen, last couple of years, be it e-commerce, be it social, be it SaaS, be it other platforms, all kinds of emerging technologies. We are not saying that we want to be, we want some level of favoritism. But as he said, positive discrimination towards Indian entrepreneurs, giving them the support, because without policies, we can only do as much.
Sure. So I agree with you. I just want to say here that, there are three inputs into any enterprise. If it's a manufacturing enterprise, it's land. Otherwise, it's labor and capital. And I may add technology as the fourth today. So I think on land, the government is doing its bit to offer land to external entrepreneurs, but also to Indian entrepreneurs. Capital is a systematic issue. It may happen over a period of time. It may not happen. But in terms of labor reforms, also the government has done. And technology, as we change our education system to bring more incubators into our education system, and we change this culture where it's okay to fail and in some way try and aim for things that may seem impossible at the start. I think that will lead to technology that the Indian enterprises can benefit from. That's my personal view. Himanshu, your inputs on where the economy is headed.
So I think one of the points that I would like to touch, which is very close to me, is technology. One of the very interesting things that I've seen is an academia and industry collaboration. I think that's where one of the biggest and the most successful model that you see in US needs to be replicated here. When it comes to technology side, I think we have enough brains. if we can today be there at Silicon Valley everywhere, I think we can do that in India as well. I think that replication of adoption of technology in India has also been very great. And when it comes to at this point in moment, I think this makes a perfect pitch point, not just from the local context, but also a context of the global scenario. So just to put it, forthwith here, we are a growing up enterprise and we are receiving a lot of calls now. And like one of my colleagues here said that he has started to receive a lot of traction, and the same way we started to see it. And we started to receive a lot of traction from the Middle East. We are receiving a lot of queries from them. And, most of these guys, they said, we want to get deals from China. So strategically, if you look at the entire globe is looking towards India now, because there has to be an alternative, maybe a smaller factory. If they are factory to the world, I think we can also set up some amount of factory in India. I think that's the next opportunity that we have. And when we say service industry, in the last 20 years, we have proven our brains to the world, that we have enough technological aspect, both in terms of soft. And I think it's the time that we start to put heart together and completely on this is the government policies, which has to really do a lot of hand holding and really have to have that long-term foresight. Because to have set up manufacturing, it really needs a stable policy decisions. I think that's what the need of the hour is.
Right, Pawan, Himanshu spoke of setting up businesses and factories, and it all boils down to the ease of doing business facet. And red tapeism and bureaucracy have already incurred a lot of damage to the prospects India could have had, but they went to other countries such as Bangladesh, Indonesia, even Myanmar for that matter. How do you think the government can tackle this nuisance?
So I'm reminded of Margaret Thatcher. She was a chemist by training, and she used to come out with very thorough policies because of her chemical training as well as because of her legal training. And she got the moniker forensic lady, which she used to love. So her policies were well worked out, watertight. And her main support in policy making was a guy called Keith Joseph. He was the head of her policy wing, whose only purpose was to tell what will be the unintended adverse consequences of the policies she brings. We need to have that thorough level of thinking to improve ease of doing business. The regulations have to be coherent, they have to be facilitative, and they should not be what you call regulatory cholesterol should be minimized. So this is one point. And the other point regarding China, which I'd like to say, the Chinese ascent happened from 1971. Though I'm very proud as an Indian that
after Mao died.
Come again?
You mean the ascent happened after Mao died?
Yeah, and I'm very proud of the event which triggered it, which was the Bangladesh severance, which we brought, or Indira Gandhi brought about, but that miffed Nixon. And Nixon, as per classified records, has openly called her a witch or whatever. And that is when America leaned towards China for it, and the overt reason was that we are going there for the regimented army of workers they have, and thereafter they took. So despite the lack of freedom in China, the ease of doing business, and as Anurag said, and you also referred to, the capital, the cost of doing business, etc., is much less. And we really need to look at this as to we need to see that what we call is the new normal. This is not the new normal. This is the new flux, because China is attacking its neighbors, becoming aggressive despite COVID. Or is it because of COVID? Because they feel that COVID has broken the economic spine of neighbors. So this is the time to attack, because our own supply chain is up and ready again. So it is possible that 6 months after now, if we deal very well on the border, push them back through economic and diplomatic and military maneuvers, it is possible that we may also feel that they say that offshoring is going to go, but what will come in the post-COVID era is friendshoring. So we have to keep our options open, that we can go with friendship or with anybody who respects us, respects our sovereignty, and deals with us fairly. So I feel right now to write off China may be a little premature. We have to push it back.
I think the intention of the world community is not to write off China, but to wipe off China.
But he's right. By the way, the movie on Margaret Thatcher was called The Iron Lady, and Meryl Streep did win an Oscar for her performance as Margaret Thatcher in one of my favorite movies.
Well, she was nominated on Iraq. She did not win it.
She didn't win it. Okay, Vineet, I stand corrected. But she was definitely nominated. I loved the movie. But coming back to policy making, if you had to recommend each one of you, Pooja, I wanted to ask you, you work with a lot of startups. Now, when you're working with those startups, what are the startups that you should see doing well? And what is in their DNA that is making them do well, vis-a-vis some startups that are not doing well, whether they're in contacts sectors, like hospitality, QSR, airlines. Of course, those sectors are not doing well. But tell us, what are the sectors that are doing well, and what are the entrepreneurs and startups that are doing well, and why? What do you see in their DNA?
The only thing that I've seen, I've worked with over 500 startups so far, and I've been on both sides of the table, interestingly. I work with investors also, and I work with startups also. The only thing that helps and keeps a startup going, right, like you point out, what's in their DNA, is that thing of innovation, is something that they want to have something that they want to solve a problem which already exists. And that drive to innovate something new is, I think, what is keeping the startups going. And a lot of startups will close down their current verticals and are working on something else, which will be more COVID or post-COVID scenario friendly. So I think, but like Pawan pointed out rightly, the problem in India is not dearth of innovation. There's no dearth of innovation or entrepreneurs or capability. No. In fact, if we go slightly deeper into the tier 2 and tier 3 sector cities, we find a lot of innovative startups and entrepreneurs who want to actually come up. But the only problem that I have with the policy so far is the implementation and the problem of access. The most difficult part for a startup is to put the car in the first gear. That's the most difficult time for a startup. And if a startup does not have access to funds, support, idea validation at that stage, it takes no time for the startup to just evaporate. So I think if the government is willing to give money, I think we should have the mechanism, the environment, more facilitating and access, which is essential. And that's the only thing that will help us keep going in the post-COVID scenario. Coming to the point of what startups are doing really well, I think startups working on the blockchain technology, startups working in FMCG and e-commerce, edtech, definitely. These are some of the startups who are doing really well, and they plan to grow and increase their valuations up in post-COVID scenario. However, I think if we have to really create a robust technology, a robust economy, I think we have to support our entrepreneurs in other cities and boost innovation there too. And make
Anurag, we only have about 4 minutes left into the program.
So let's get a quick comment from each one. We start with you, Pawan. How do you see the Indian economy doing in the next 3 months, 90 days to 120 days? We know in the medium term and long term, Indian economy is poised to do well because of the innovation, because of government spending, which I hope will happen in a big way in the future. So where is the Indian economy going to be in the next 3 to 4 months? Is it going to be worse than now, or is it going to be better?
So in my view, it will be stagnant. It will not be good. Having said that, I would also like to say what you said, that in the long term, what Pooja has said is very relevant. Innovation is not the problem here. The Indian experts lack expertise. That is the problem. Who are the experts today who can tell that how energy sector and defense policy, how healthcare sector and defense policy are intertwined and how they affect each other. Who are the experts today who can tell how AI, blockchain, big data, etc. are influencing not only these sectors but also geopolitics? I have had a good fortune of having first-hand interaction with the Prime Minister and seeing what is the width of his knowledge. It is great, but how many people in his advisory body can give him that kind of advice? Where is the depth coming from? So this is the big problem because of which we fail again and again, because of ill thought out policies which come back to bite us.
Okay, Pawan. Himanshu, your final comment on where the economy will be in the next 90 days.
Just a couple of minutes left and then we wrap up.
I see it in the spasm. It's going to be bad days ahead. Not so easy.
Okay. All right.
Anurag, I think that by Diwali, the economy is going to improve by a lot, and the economic activity outside of metropolitan regions is certainly going to be back to pre-COVID levels, while in metropolitan regions, we will find other ways to carry on the business. But by Diwali, very optimistic.
I know we will be back because festive season, it's also November. Hopefully, we would have dealt with COVID. So it is possible what you're saying may happen. Sandeep?
So I think that for the next 3 months, it will be in a survive and adapt mode. And if we go positive, the only reason would be whether there is leadership at the state level. We are putting too much pressure and expectation from the central government. When we compare China also, the city, the state minister, chief minister, we have 29 chief ministers and 100 mayors. So the last time the pandemic was there, just to give you an example, I was just doing some research. So in 1924, Jawaharlal Nehru was the mayor of Allahabad, Vallabhbhai Patel was the mayor of Ahmedabad, Rajendra Prasad was the mayor of Patna. So if the quality of leadership will also drive how we move forward post 3 months.
Okay. All right. We just have a minute to go. And then we'll wrap up.
A quick comment and we'll take the final word.
No, I'm just going to wrap it quickly, and I'm just going to say that it's not going to be easy. That's what I feel. The future is not going to be easy until all of us individually develop a stronger peripheral vision and adapt ourselves to the future. That's all.
Karan, your final word.
Anurag, I think what's going to happen is the paranoid will survive, and also there are lots of opportunities right now. And I think the ones who are paranoid about this time will survive, not even survive, but even grow many multiple times.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being a part of this.
Book, only the paranoid survived. So I think
wonderful show
and times like now.
And Anurag, thank you to you too for being a part of this show. And I do have to correct myself, Anurag. You were right. Meryl Streep did win the Best Actress Oscar for The Iron Lady. I stand corrected. Thank you everyone for watching this show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.